Sure.
Yeah, I've just finished a book by Daniel Ingram called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. This is a
Oh.
emergency medicine physician in America who spent 14 years doing intensive practice on and off around work and doing long retreats, and became an arhat or enlightened,
Hmm.
having done that for so long. And yeah, it's a very rigorous and no bullshit book. It's not exactly a literary masterpiece, but
Hmm.
it's very very cutting and sort of quite dismissive of a lot of the tradition that comes with meditation. And he's very much about just stick with the practice. And he talks about, as you
Look,
said,
can I,
that
let me interrupt
sure,
you because, and hold on to that thought, please. This is tremendously important. Buddhism is a religion in Thailand. It's actually the state religion, the country's religion, but it's not a religion. The practice, as taught by the Buddha, is an absolutely, utterly empirical approach. He says this is just a method. If you practice it, and there's all sorts of things that can happen as you practice, and when this happens, do this, and when that happens, do something else. If you practice this, in the Satipatthana Sutta, he describes the road as a one-way road. If you keep practicing, it will lead to this end point, as your author Daniel described, and it's inevitable. That's what people don't realize, and it's a system. You take nothing on faith. In fact, the Buddha was eloquent on this. Take nothing on faith. Don't even take what I say on faith. Simply, here are a set of instructions, try them and see what happens to you. That's it. Now and I've heard people on retreats say, oh, it can't be that simple. That's what the mind does. The mind's job is to create problems and come up with reasons why something won't work. Forget all that. And as Daniel says, just sit down and do the practice. Of course, that's not exotic enough for a lot of people.
I think that's exactly it. And he talks about the pitfalls people fall into, or things that their minds do to take them to do anything but the practice. And he says even on 10-day retreats, he says there are people who will sit there and they're basically comparing robes and incense and just steeping in their neuroses and using the guru as a psychotherapist rather than he's like, he said, I was sat there at one point, I just shouted out, like, is anybody actually doing the practice, or are we all just sat here fucking masturbating? So it's yeah.
If I'd been there, I just would have clapped. Look, this is so absolutely spot on. A very famous Tibetan Rinpoche, Trogdrim Trungpa Rinpoche, you've probably heard of him. He wrote a book called Spiritual Materialism. And so, unfortunately, in our world, way too many people are at the robes and incense and chanting stage, and they've got the right purba, those triangular knives that the Tibetans use in their rituals, and they've got all the gear. They know all about it. They know all about the practices. They can talk about the practices for hours. But Yusuf, if the practice has not changed you at a fundamental level, you've been wasting your time. That's spiritual materialism. Spiritual materialism is knowing all about a practice, and yet it has not changed you. If you're doing any practice, and this goes for flexibility, it goes for strength training, meditation, relaxation, anything, if it's not being effective, and there are all sorts of ways we can assess effectiveness, you're doing the wrong practice, or you're not doing the practice. Most times, you're not doing the practice as the instructions are given. That's all.
All the gear and no idea. And we see the same in powerlifting as well, for example, where you get people that have got all the latest sleeves and expensive belts and singlet and all this.
Yeah.
You're like, what are your lifts? And they're terrible. And you just think, maybe do away with all of the expensive stuff and just follow a single progression program for 3 years, 5 years, and then come back and earn the right to get the equipment and to worry about daily undulating periodization and all this stuff.
Oh, I could not agree more. Look, I'll just give a brief story from my own life. There was a period, at some time, I think it was about 10 years ago now, I think I mentioned this to you in another conversation, but I was struck down by a mystery virus. I still don't have any idea what it was. But I was in intensive care for 10 days, and my C-reactive protein scores were over 325. I was extremely ill. Now, the doctors who were doing their best that they could to treat me at the time afterwards told me that for most patients, if you get C-reactive protein scores of over 325, which are measures of internal infection, you die from multiple organ failure. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's what I was told. But here's the thing. When I came out of that experience, and no one ever did find out what the virus was, and I recovered, but I spent the next 6 months doing nothing but sleeping. I slept and ate, and Olivia looked after me. And then, so now we're talking about 7 months after, to the day almost, from when I was struck down by the virus, when I was carted off to hospital, I went into the heavy weights room, the Olympic lifting room at the ANU, the gym that I was working at and where we ran our classes, and empty bar sitting on a squat rack, so 20 kilos. I got underneath the empty bar, I did four reps of the full back squat, and that flattened me for a week.
Wow.
4 reps of the empty bar. This is true. This is true. I promise you I'm not making this up. I'd gone from my body weight before the infection was about 85 kilos, and I'd gone down to 63. That happened in 2 weeks, by the way.
Okay, huge.
Massive. So then 6 months later, now I'm a kind of a flabby 68, I think, completely weak because all I've been doing was sleeping. But I just felt, okay, now I have to do something. So I got back and I trained once a week only, and I only did back squats and front squats. And I was in and out of the gym because my energy levels were so low. They used to call me the phantom trainer because I'd be in and out while the other guys were warming up. But in that 1 year, and I promise you I swear this is true, my body weight went back up to over 90 kilograms, and I managed my best ever front squat and best ever back squat, training once a week.